One of the biggest challenges that we face as blues guitarists is keeping our playing interesting and unpredictable and kind of playful. So often, the core of our playing is based around the minor pentatonic, in most cases, and that's a 5-note scale. And so if you're just kind of using that scale and you're not thinking about inventive or slightly different ways to keep it a little spicy, then you potentially will fall into the trap of creating kind of bland, fairly predictable solos. Now, those are many, many ways that we can address that in our playing, and I've got a load of YouTube videos you can check out and lessons and courses that address that kind of stuff. But today, we are going to talk about tension and resolution. And specifically, we're going to talk about alternative options that you can target in your playing. Now, I'll dig into all the kind of technical terms and a little bit of the theory in a moment, but in short, this is going to allow you to create a lot more mileage from your phrases. It's going to give you different options. It's going to make your playing a little bit more unpredictable, and it's going to allow you to connect ideas and kind of keep momentum in the playing. So often I sort of work with players who create one lick, then there's a kind of big pause. They've got to then kind of restart the engine of their improvisation to get the next lick. And it feels kind of very almost a little siloed. Their playing is very disconnected. By opting for what I'm going to show you in the rest of this lesson, you can really turn that on its head. And each phrase will lead into one another in a very kind of playful and interesting way. So let's dive into it. Let's look at how we can alter our points of resolution, not always going for the tonic, and create some very, very cool sounding licks and very cool connecting ideas. Now, first things first, we're going to touch on a little bit of the theory here. You don't need to engage with this at a super deep level if that's not really your thing, but understanding a little bit of it, at least kind of, in your ear, even if you're not super comfortable with what's going on with the notes, is going to make a massive difference here. Because what we're talking about is tension and resolution, a kind of key part of music, a key part of what makes music so interesting and why we love listening to it. And that all relates to the intervals in the scale that you're using and the quality of those intervals. So we're dealing here with our minor pentatonic scale, and we're playing in the key of A minor, the trusty, beloved A minor pentatonic scale. Most of these examples are going to be in the kind of first and second shapes of this scale, but honestly, this could apply all over the place because the scale in all of its different patterns and shapes just contains the same 5 notes, the same 5 intervals. But I'll start in this first shape and kind of run through things here. So there are 5 notes and 5 distinct intervals, which are as follows. We've got the 1, the tonic. We've got the flat 3. We've got the 4. We've got the 5. The flat 7. And then we go back to the tonic. Now, that is going to be the same in every single key. So if you move that into G, E, B, whatever, it's the same intervals are going to appear. Now, without turning this into a 20-minute theory lesson, some of those intervals have a resolved sound, create a feeling of resolution, and others don't. They create a feeling of tension. Now, within this pentatonic framework, the 2 kind of notes that have the strongest sense of resolution are the tonic and the 5th. The tonic is really the big one in terms of resolution. So if you're playing in the key of A, that is going to sound like the musical home bass. When you hit that note, it's going to sound, okay, we can hang out there. It's all cool. It's great. We can chill because it has such a strong sense of resolution. The 5th also has a strong sense of resolution, but not quite so strong. It feels a little bit more like a musical comma than it does a full stop. It kind of feels resolved. No tension is really being created, but there's kind of a little bit of a sense of movement there. So if we go for the same kind of thing, so I paused there on that 5th, which is the 7th fret of the A string, and you can hear, sounds pretty cool, sounds pretty chilled, but it still kind of wants to go somewhere. So I then resolved it down to the tonic. But those are your kind of 2 big points of resolution. The other notes are not going to create such a resolved sound. They are going to sound like they want to move somewhere else, like you want to keep on playing and then resolve on the tonic or the fifth. So if you kind of stop there, it's going to give, if you stop there unintentionally, it's going to give your playing a kind of, a little bit like stopping in the middle of a sentence. It's going to sound weird. So let me show you that example. Say, let's we take the fourth. You can feel it wants to move up, or it wants to move up to the fifth. It wants to move somewhere else. And that's going to be even a stronger feeling with some of the other intervals in the scale. Now, if you've been improvising and playing for some time, it's highly likely that you are used to targeting the tonic, and you're used to creating that very strong sense of resolution through licks like this. So just going from one tonic to the next to the next. Nothing really wrong with that. It's super safe, sounds great, sounds resolved, no tension, sounds very intentional. Sounds like you're saying a sentence, pausing. Next sentence, pause. But there is a way that we can really give you more options and kind of spice up your playing and make it a lot more interesting by targeting the intervals that have a tense sound as points of resolution. So let's look at that now. Step number 2. So the first alternative to always locking in on the tonic is, you might have guessed it, targeting the fifth. This is a really kind of cool option because it still creates a sense of resolution, but it wants to lead somewhere. So if your playing is currently feeling a bit stilted, it's like phrase number 1, pause. Phrase number 2, pause. Ending on the fifth as a kind of musical comma is going to sound really, really nice. So, for example, something like this. So what I did there was I started in that first shape, slid up to the second, hit the fifth there at the 9th fret on the G string, which then pulled me through to the second phrase, and then which I then resolved on the tonic. If I had not played that fifth and I'd just targeted the tonic up here, then that sense of connection is lost. It starts to feel a little bit more like two separate ideas rather than one kind of connected idea. So if you are always resolving on the tonic, going for the fifth is your first kind of crucial step. Now, where are you going to find the fifth? You're going to find the fifth, the same position, the same fret, one string lower in pitch, higher in kind of geographical terms, so one string closer to you, all over the fretboard. So for example, in the key of A, we've got the tonic note of A on the 7th fret of the D string, and the fifth is going to be here. So same fret, one string up. The note of E in the key of A. Same sort of thing here. You're going to find the tonic note at the 5th fret of the E string, beg your pardon. And the fifth is going to be there on the B string right below it. The only fly in the ointment is that between the B and the G strings, we always have to adjust this connection because of the tuning of the guitar and that kind of half semitone difference. So between the B and the G strings, you're not going to find the fifth directly below the tonic. You're going to find it one fret back. So if we're in that kind of second position here of the minor pentatonic scale, and we've got our tonic note of A here, you're going to find the fifth there, that 9th fret on the G string as I just played. So, Give that a go. Try to kind of resolve onto that fifth instead of the tonic. It's going to give you many more options. It's going to keep your phrases going, keep the momentum going, and two extra bonuses. Number one, it's going to help you sound like Albert King. He's a big kind of resolve to the fifth guy, especially in this Albert King box, which I've got a full video on that, linked it below if you want to go and check that out. But or any of those kind of classic Albert King box licks are all going to resolve on the fifth and sound awesome. So that's benefit number one. Benefit number two is that it's going to start getting you more comfortable with your intervals and notes as they appear all over the fretboard. It's kind of quite easy for us to fall into the trap of knowing where the tonic notes are, but nothing else. Whereas here, you just go, okay, the tonic's there, so the fifth is going to be directly kind of below it, above it, depending on how you think, or on the beats of the G string, just one fret back. But it's always literally right there. So you should be able to kind of target it with ease, and that's going to start to demystify the fretboard a little bit for you. So give that a go, and when you're ready, let's kind of dig a little bit deeper and dive into some slightly more complicated material. Okay, so now we've covered what the tonic is and how that brings a strong sense of resolution. We've looked at the fifth as the first kind of alternative option for creating a slightly different feel in the playing. Now let's look at the remaining three notes of the minor pentatonic scale in turn, and some very cool bluesy things that we can do with them to provide you with alternative options for resolving your ideas and just creating a much more kind of unpredictable, playful feel in your solos. So let's start with first the flat third. Now, the flat third in the minor pentatonic framework is the next note beyond the tonic. So every time you've played a tonic, it's the next note in the scale. So if we're in that kind of first shape here, then we've got our tonic note of A, 7th fret of the D string. The next note in the scale, that 5th fret on the G string, is the flat third. Likewise, when we get to that top string, the 5th fret there is the tonic note of A. The flat third is going to be that 8th fret. And if we're kind of sticking, with the little examples that we've been using so far, if we go to this tonic note of A here, the 10th fret on the B string, then we're going to have the flat third in two different places. We're going to have it the 8th fret on the E string, or you could also go up to the 13th fret on the B string. I'll explain some cool little options that we can do there and target there, which I also targeted in the opening solo in this lesson. So that's where we're going to find our flat third. Oh, and finally, you're also going to find it down here as well, on the low E string, but honestly, I'm not sure that we're going to be targeting that note in our solos because it sounds a little bit heavy, a little bit woolly, not really that cool. So let's look at some of these options. The way that I absolutely love to target this note is with a little blues curl after the tonic. So you hit the tonic, and then you go to that note with a little blues curl, and you kill the note. The key here is you have to kill the note, and this is going to be a recurring theme for these other three notes that do not kind of create a strong sense of resolution. If you hang out on that note, it's going to sound totally unresolved, and it's going to sound kind of weird. So if you hang out on that note and you let it ring out, you can see it just sounds odd. It sounds like stopping in the middle of a sentence. It feels like you've got unfinished business that you kind of need to take care of. But if you hit that note and then use right hand muting to just kill it, you get this beautiful burst of tension that then is kind of cut down before it becomes overwhelming. It also really pulls you through beautifully into the next idea. So it is a wonderful, wonderful way of connecting one idea with the next and not giving you that feel which happens when you always resolve on the tonic, like, okay, stop, and the next phrase. And the next phrase. So it's a really, really cool way of keeping the momentum of what you are doing going. Now, the one little kind of additional cool thing that you can do here within the little spots that we've been looking at is when you go to this tonic note here, the 10th fret on the B string, you've got two options. You can kind of do the same thing that we were doing here, but an octave higher. Or you can do what I did in my opening solo, which is target the flat third, the minor third, up here at the 13th fret. And so you slide into it, you push it up with a little curl, and then again you kill it. Sounds absolutely awesome, and by combining that slide with the blues curl, you're kind of getting this 2-for-1 deal. Just sounds really, really cool, very, very beautiful, and really kind of a little bit unpredictable as well, which gives your solo this kind of playful quality, which is awesome. So, flat third, give that a go, see how you get on. Now, I'm using specific examples here, but you can apply this all over the fretboard. You just need to find out where's the tonic, and then the flat third is going to be the next note in the scale along that, both kind of laterally, along the single string, and also vertically, so whichever way you're playing and thinking of the scale. So good luck with that, and when you're ready, head over to the next little bit of this lesson where we'll talk about the perfect fourth. Okay, perfect fourth. Now this one's going to be a little bit of a quick one. I'm not a huge fan. I don't think this note is quite so easy to target and doesn't have quite as many options as either the flat third, which we've just discussed, or the flat seventh, which we'll come to in a minute. However, one thing that I think works really, really well is a little kind of Stevie Ray Vaughan idea, and John Mayer actually also has used it kind of, following in the inspiration of Stevie Ray. And it is just simply playing a kind of phrase that just stops in the middle of nowhere, basically. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But let's first identify where the flat four, where the perfect fourth is. So if we're in this kind of first shape, you've got the 1, flat 3, and then the 4 is going to be there. So the 5th fret of the A string, and that's going to be found an octave higher on the 7th fret of the G string. So that is where you will find the 4. Now, I don't typically target this one nearly as much as I do the flat 3 and the flat 7. You might find that it is the one that you love the most, but this is the one really cool thing that I like to do with it to kind of bring a little of that Stevie Ray Vaughan, John Mayer magic into the solos. So what I like to do is something like this. Let's say that you're playing on that G string and you're kind of bending, so you're actually bending the 4 here. That kind of an idea. You then do this quick series of pull-offs which resolve you onto the 4 an octave lower. So something like this. And as soon as you get to that 4 down there on the A string, you kill it. You kill the note, you kill the phrase. So if we break that down a little slower, it's like this. So you're bending the 4 on the 7th on the G string, you're releasing to the 5th fret, and then you're doing 2 pull-offs, first on the D string, 7 to 5, and then again on the A string, 7 to 5. And that creates a very, very cool sound, and just like we saw with the flat 3, it pulls you through to another idea. That is like really a kind of, hey, what's coming next? So it really keeps the momentum going in your solos. So just a little fun thing to try, anytime you're in that first pentatonic shape, and test yourself, try and move this into different positions, try and find other areas where you might be able to play the kind of same series of notes, maybe an octave high, maybe in a different kind of string or whatever, to give yourself more options and build up your knowledge of the fretboard, what's happening, where these intervals appear and where. And that is a kind of, an extra little bonus skill that you've got alongside bringing this extra flavor into your playing. And last but not least, we have the flat 7. Now, the flat 7 interval, you are always going to find that 2 frets behind the tonic. So if we are, this is the penultimate, this is the ultimate note rather, not the penultimate note, the ultimate note that you play before you play the tonic whenever you're playing the minor pentatonic scale. So in this kind of framework that we're working in here, you're going to find the flat 7 here on the 5th fret of the D string. 2 frets below the tonic here. You're going to find the flat 7 here on the 8th fret of the B string, before then playing the tonic on the 5th fret of the E. And that same flat 7 there could be sort of, viewed in that second shape behind this tonic here. Okay? And of course, you're going to find this all over the fretboard in all these different shapes, but we're kind of keeping a nice focused approach for this lesson here. Now, as with all of this stuff, I want you to experiment and find ways that work for you. But my favorite way of targeting this flat 7 is to hit the tonic and actually allow that sense of resolution to kind of bed into the ear of the listener. And then, just as you're thinking that you're going to resolve there, you pull off or play or target the flat 7. So, and just like we kind of saw with that flat 3rd idea, well, with all these ideas really, it creates this little burst of tension, this burst of color, before you then move on and do something else. And it turns what could be a real strong sense of finality into something much more open-ended. So rather than going pause and then playing something else, you've got this kind of little beautiful connecting idea where it pulls you through into the next phrase. And you can try that there. You can try it an octave lower. And basically whenever you're kind of finding doesn't really work so well across strings, to be honest. It really works better on the same string in that way. Just a little burst of color after you're targeting the tonic. But as with all this stuff, guys, experiment, try things out for yourself. How often you use these different notes, the different ways that you resolve them, how you pull through from one phrase to the next, the techniques that you use, whether you use lateral movements to target some of these ideas or kind of vertical ones, and how you put all of this together in the course of a full solo or improvisation. So, as with all of my lessons, my big ask is for you to explore these ideas in sufficient depth. Don't just play them once and then kind of move on, because there is so much to explore here. And really altering the way that you resolve your phrases and you play around with tension in this way is going to make your solos much more interesting, much less predictable. It's going to open up a whole new style of phrasing for you because you're not just going to be going tonic to tonic to tonic. It's going to allow you to create a much more connected, kind of coherent feel in your improvisations, and I think you're going to have a load of fun with it, as well as really improving your understanding of the fretboard, where these intervals appear, what's going on, and developing your ear to understand that kind of tension and resolution, and what is creating tension, what is creating resolution. So, as always, guys, any questions, thoughts, comments, let me know below. I love to see them. Good luck with this, happy soloing, and I will see you next time.